and the Builder. Why don't you start by just giving me a little bit of background on yourself and how you got started on this journey?
Hey, how's it going, man? It's good to see you. Good. I'm glad you have me on here. Yes, but yeah, this journey, man, like it dates back. Like for me, like it dates back to like childhood. You know what I mean? Like the age of like 12. Like just a bit of background, like just my upbringing. Like I came up in a very rigid household. Like I was raised Catholic, so I was in a Catholic household and a military household. Like my dad,
Mm.
Army, 25 years. You know what I mean? 25-year Army guy. Um, Mom, a devout Catholic. You know what I mean? So just kind of to give you a sense of the family, like the structure I was born into.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I kind of come into a very rigid, kind of restricted. But me as a child, like I was very much a free spirit. Like I was very much a sovereign spirit. Like I had major problems with authority, man. Like almost every authority figure that my teachers, parents, principals, Sunday school teachers. Started giving them a go when I really started like delving into like spiritual things and whatnot. Um, but yeah, um, so I had a very kind of troubled childhood because of that. Like I reacted against those systems like very strongly.
Yeah, I
Like
I did as well. I got my fair share of detentions and suspensions along the along
all
the way.
day. Yeah, that was me all the way. I mean, I was like a real like Bart Simpson type. At the time I didn't realize what I was reacting against.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like a more intuitive sense. And then there was school, of course. School, the most rigid and restrictive, one of the most damaging and destructive institutions to like creativity and the imagination that maybe will ever be subjected to. You know what I mean? And then there was that, and that was my experience with that. So I mean, I got in a lot of trouble. You know what I mean? I got expelled, like suspended, like I got in serious trouble. And so what happened is I spent a lot of time punished. I spent a lot of time in my room, like parents taking the video games away. Can't go outside. Take my N64. So I was being bad. I was getting in a lot of trouble, and I was just being very reactive. But my parents, they still allowed me to read. When I was in the room, when I was in solitary confinement, essentially, like for just showing my ass at school and just showing out and just being wild. Like, so, they were like, you can read. And my dad had an amazing library. Like, I mean, just my dad was an avid reader. Like he was into spirituality, the occult, conspiracies, you know what I mean? Like just religions, ancient teachings. Like, I mean, just a library just brimming with that stuff. So like the summer when I got expelled and I was basically punished the whole summer, I didn't have shit to do. I went downstairs and I started reading. Like I started grabbing my dad's books. Like I start like, you know what I mean? Behold the Pale Horse. That was one of the books in my dad's collection, William Cooper. Like one of the major conspiracy classics, of our time. Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper. My dad had that book.
Actually,
And
I have it in my room right now.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, my dad still has it in his library. Like I visited him a couple of weeks ago and went and looked through his library again. It's still there. But yeah, that summer, man, like I just started reading and I just started expanding my mind like rapidly. Like it was like a real like it was like on some Malcolm X type shit. You know what I mean? Like Malcolm X, he got locked up and he read a Quran in jail, and then eventually he read the whole damn library. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he's and his whole consciousness changed. You know what I mean? He's like this different guy after that experience, and so that's when I developed my love of of learning. Like it wasn't in school. Like I didn't develop my love of learning in school. I mean, I hated I hated learning in school. Like I hated being forced to uh, regurgitate this or that, hey, read that chapter and then, take this test. And, I hated jumping through those hoops. I didn't feel like I was really growing in any of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I
So
think
it's like,
I think that's part of why I rejected school as well, is because
mm,
like from a very young age, I loved learning. Like I knew that about myself. I loved like spending time in nature, observing nature,
yes,
like
same
the
way.
act of expanding my mind. Like I found that anything that stimulated me and like really got me thinking and it excited me, like I loved that. And so for me, even from a very young age, like being in school and not experiencing that in the classroom setting,
Mm,
it was like, why am I here then? This is the
yeah.
place that's supposed to be stimulating me, exciting me,
And
and
that's what they say it is, right? They say this is,
totally.
yeah.
And when I felt instead like I was being restricted, like my creativity wasn't being rewarded or anything, like then I rebelled. And
Mm,
I think another interesting thing that you might be able to relate to is like even though I was getting in trouble like all through, especially middle school, but also elementary school. Like
middle school was the hot spot for
middle
me.
school was when
Middle
I
school
got
was,
my first suspension. That's when I really peaked. And then high school I chilled out a little bit. I like under the radar, but I always had teachers that kind of understood like my frustration. They
mm,
were also frustrated with the high school curriculum and they wanted to
yeah.
be,
Because
and they could
they're
kind of
just,
see that I had that spirit to learn and that I wasn't getting it from the school system.
yeah, I could definitely relate. I mean, did you you grew up in like public school? You just went through like public school pretty much? Or?
Well, I actually started like elementary and middle school. I grew up in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, actually, and so I went to a private Catholic school called Roland Hall,
Hmm.
um, and like
You got the Catholic too, so you have
yeah,
that whole, yeah. I mean,
yeah. I mean, my family specifically wasn't Catholic. I was raised in kind of like a mix of like my mom was raised in the Mormon church, but she left the church and then I would still sometimes go to Sunday school with my grandma and sometimes I would go to the Buddhist church with my best friend, and
awesome, nice,
my
nice.
grandpa was a scientist, so I was just kind of all over the place. But I was at this Catholic middle school getting in all sorts of trouble, and then I moved to Washington State, and once I went to public school I kind of just stayed below the radar, but um, I definitely never felt really stimulated. And I felt that even going into college, I think throughout high school, I was like waiting for that moment of, okay, like I'm finally excited. And I feel like my teachers kept telling me like, no, like high school is just preparing you for college. It's all for preparation for college. College is when you're going to get that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's like the promised land
The
of,
promised land of college.
your education.
And then I went to college and I was like, I love the college experience, but I was like, I'm not getting this. Like,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. When I went to college, yeah, the main thing I took from that experience was like the friendships that I made, and like all the fun I had. Like that was like my first time like really being off on my own. Like when I went off to college, like I lived a very kind of sheltered life. You know what I mean? And I also reacted against. But yes, I mean when I got to college, I mean yeah, that was like one of my first times being off on my own. And as far as the learning, as far as the depth of the learning, no, I wouldn't say that it was significantly deeper than what we got before. I mean,
yeah,
like I kind of did the more deeper learning on my own,
same.
just
What
freelance.
what did you get your degree in?
Political science.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to get into politics. You know what I mean? And that was actually informed by all of the stuff that I learned earlier in life, like all of the things that I learned about the government, like the insidious things, like the sinister things that the power structures on this planet does. You know what I mean? And I was like inspired to like, it's like, okay, I want to create change from the inside. I want to infiltrate that structure. I want to breathe life into it. You know what I mean? I want to bring my insights into it. I want to make it work for humanity instead of against it. It's like, oh, I can do that. You know what I mean? I could go to college and I can learn politics and I can get into law and then I can, run for local office and just start, doing all of this stuff. Work, I mean, like I was really this idealistic, young man that thought I could, ch- you know, create change from within, within those institutions. And eventually, I rejected that notion. I think, you know what I mean. I came to just look at those institutions as things that simply that need to be dissolved
Yeah.
more than anything. I mean, they, you know what I mean? I got the sense that people like me, when they go into something like that, they just get chewed up and spit out. You know what I mean? Like someone who really wants to make a difference. You know what I mean? You'll see candidates here and there. You'll see someone come up that will have great ideas. Like Bernie Sanders is someone that I would throw out. I've liked some of his ideas. I like some of the things that I felt like he had he has a very humanitarian platform.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's like
Yep.
just watching someone like that, watching the media machine just destroy someone like that, just completely marginalize them and ensure that their voices, that can't resonate, it's just, it's sad. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, you don't want to get involved with that. You know what I mean? You create change elsewhere. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Create, something else elsewhere. So kind of went through that disillusionment and meant you know, with what I studied and just, moved away from it. And, like I work in IT now, like I work in the IT industry, I'm a system administrator. Like I don't do anything related to politics and don't want to, like I don't want to contribute my energy to something like that, you know.
Yeah. I had kind of a similar experience of like college, the disillusionment process of college, and like going in super idealistic, and for me, I went in as an engineering student, and I always like core to like my being, like knew that my purpose had something to do with like learning to live in harmony with mother nature. Like I
Yeah.
spent so much of my childhood camping, and uh yeah, like I didn't even have an iPhone until senior year of high school, or video games until like junior year of high school. So I really just like spent time in nature, and I was really, all even as a kid, really passionate about like conserving wildlife, and just like, yeah, living symbiotically with the earth. And so I went into engineering school with the idea that like I could invent something, some machine, some
Mm.
new energy, some way that would allow us to
Yeah.
create that society that I think we all kind of hold in our minds of like, this is how it should be. This is how
Yeah.
it
The
could
the
be.
vision.
This is
Yeah.
how it could be if we were willing to let go of a lot. And then I also kind of like just felt like I was getting pigeonholed, into like nowhere in the process of college was it did I feel like my ideas, especially big picture, were being valued, or really anyone was receptive to them, and
Mm.
so I started to realize like my voice is never going to be heard inside the beast.
Yes.
I'm never
Yes.
going to
That.
go into
Yes.
the corporate world and have my ideas be valued, because a lot of my ideas devalue the corporate world. you
Right.
know
You'd be at odds with the
I'd be
values
at odds with
that
the
you're
very
trying to uphold.
fundamental nature of most of the companies that I'd be looking to get hired from. So
Mm.
it kind of put me in a really interesting spot. My junior year is really when I came to these conclusions, because my first 2 years, like I enjoy science and physics and chemistry, and so like I enjoyed my first 2 years of college, and a lot of what I learned. It wasn't until like my third year when I really felt restricted, and I was like taking tests, and I would get like all the answers right, and I'd get a D or a C minus because I didn't follow this step to this step to this step to this step.
Yeah, didn't do it their way.
And something in me like was like, that's fundamentally wrong. Like, why
Mhm.
are we discouraging people from thinking in different ways? Like that. And from there I realized like if I keep going down this route, like I'm gonna spend the rest of my life thinking how other people tell me to think and following other people's steps. And like on a spiritual level, like I just rejected that. So
Right
that's
on,
when I
man.
started.
Right on.
That's when I started the company. I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to land on my feet post college and support myself and somehow work in these ideas that I'm really passionate about, about like what like a better government could be, what like awakening humanity to our potential, our our divine birthrights, our sovereign rights, like just like helping people remember that so that we can claim what is already ours. And yeah, that really left me with no other option but entrepreneurship. And
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta make your own way, right? It's yeah, I definitely understand. Like I still personally, I still work in a corporate structure. You know what I mean? Like my day job, you know what I mean, is it's a corporate job. You know what I mean? It's a mega corporation. You know what I mean? That I work for and support. But that's my day job. You know what I mean? That's by day. It's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Neo. Thomas Anderson. He went to work for that software company. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But then at night what does he do? You know what I mean? He's searching for the truth. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? He's searching for answers. You know what I mean? He's searching for a way out of a world that he perceives as being restricted. You know what I mean? Being something that restricts and kills uh, our potential. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that. You know what I mean? And I have a family. You know what I mean? I have a wife. I have 2 kids. You know what I mean? I have a career. You know what I mean? So I have that aspect of my life.
yeah.
But then I have those passions. The kind of things you talk about. You know what I mean? Bringing out my potential, helping other people bring out their potential. You know what I mean? Helping people fulfill their visions. Because I understand where those visions come from. You know what I mean? I know those visions come from the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? I know where the inspiration and the vision within us comes from. So it's like I have to get that out of me, and then I have to help other people do the same. We all have to work together to do that. And that's why I love you, and I love your account, and I love your work, because that's what it's centered around. It's centered around forming deeper connections between human beings. You know what I mean? More rootedness to the earth, more rootedness and connectedness to our planet. You know what I mean? And I love that about your message and what you share. You know.
I really appreciate that. And yeah, I've been following your account for a while now, and I follow a lot of people, but I keep a short list of people that I like actually like I have a list that I follow. And I always like really respect people that can kind of stop me in my tracks and like genuinely like stimulate my mind and make me really think. And like one thing that I think is so beautiful about awareness is the way it can be shared, and I think through social media we're always somewhat restricted, but I do think it's beautiful that you can create an aha moment for someone else. And I've definitely had moments where like I see a tweet from like Brandon the Builder and I'm like, yes, like that guy is on the same wave. Like I totally
Just got to download, and I got on and put that on there. That's all.
dude, that's what we do. We just
That's
sit
all.
around, get a download, just
Like,
drop
oh,
it
I got to share that. Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, I got you.
in the
Yeah.
interweb. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one tweet you had a while back, but it was something along the lines of like the way the mind is like the way the mind works, it's totally conceivable that we do things that we don't know why we're doing them, but on a deeper level, we 100% understand why we're doing it that way.
Yeah, man.
And I really resonate with that because sometimes I'm like,
And I got that from Jung. I mean, that's a conception that I got from Jung, like his model of the psyche. You know what I mean?
yes,
About with the unconscious. You know, with the aspect of the mind so deep and so remote that we can't get to it. You know what I mean? But it can still get to us. You know,
yes,
that's like kind of how he conceived and how he put it. Like it can still reach into us. It can still talk to us. Uh, and it's always trying to do that. It's always trying to make contact with us. You know what I mean? It's with all the little messages and the little syncs that you pick up in your life, the
yeah,
synchronicities, and all these little points of meaning that just pop up. You know what I mean? That's to me is the unconscious trying to bring us towards deeper understandings in ourselves and our relatedness and our connectedness. You know, to everything else. Like, yeah, that's something that's big with me. I think about that a lot. Like I think about that voice. I think about that hidden hand behind the mind. Like, what is it doing? What is it planning? You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I know it's something beautiful.
yeah.
That's the thing. Like that's why I don't, despite all the things that I've studied and all of the dark rabbit holes that I've been down. It's like I know that there's a plan that's bigger than all of it. There's a plan that's bigger than all of that stuff. All of that stuff actually fits into that plan, into this bigger plan. It's like that's not the end all be all. You know, the government, the elites, the Illuminati, the control systems, you know, the all of the craziness. You know what I mean? It's like there's something hidden going on. You know what I mean? There's something bigger than all of
And
that stuff.
and somewhere in our subconscious mind, like we know the role that we're here to play, you know, and
I think we show up with that. I think we're day one. I mean, the day we're born, we have the blueprint for who we are. Like our potential is like inscribed like in our hearts and in our minds. It's there day one. You know what I mean? It's like a seed. You know, you take a seed. It's like that seed. It may not be the flower yet, but that flower's in there. It
yeah,
contains the potential of that flower. You know, and if you plant that seed and if you cultivate that seed right, then it'll see its fullest potential as it blooms. You know, and it's like
yeah,
that's what we are. That's what a human being is. You know.
I 100% agree. And I think the more we resist our true nature, the more we try to be anything else, that's when we experience suffering. At
Yeah,
least,
I think that just drives us insane. I
yes,
think when we act against our nature, I think that just makes a human being just go crazy. They're like
and it's
insane
easy.
asylum. Like I think that's what society is. Society is like a collective
It is.
denial of like the kind of activities that we should be putting ourselves to, but can't or won't because the world that we built for ourselves doesn't really leave us the space for that or doesn't value that, you know.
And it like mental health and insanity and yeah, schizophrenia and a lot of these things. Like I through this journey, especially this last like 4 years or so, like I've definitely got a completely new perspective on all of that because like at certain points like in my journey of like recognizing kind of like yeah getting initiations into the darker occult and understanding society and really seeing it through the lens of a certain amount of collective insanity agreed upon collective insanity that we go along with out of fear of isolation out of fear of yeah not out of fear of being alone and being judged and being criticized, we're willing to go along with so much insanity that goes against our own soul. And so when I see like someone unstable or someone yelling in the streets, telling people to wake up, and like
Yeah, you wonder about them.
at one
You
level,
wonder
like
about those.
I
I wonder about those
understand.
people. I've always
Like
wondered about those people.
I'm like, I hear you. Like
It's like, did they just break? Did the
you
system
snap.
just break? Did the system just break them? Did they snap? Are they just one of the ones that snapped? And just,
Yeah,
it's
and
like, it's
are
a
they
wonder why more of us aren't, with
because I've felt like that. Like the other day, like I don't know, like I was in a grocery store or something, and like someone came up and told me to put a mask on, and it was like the 100th time I've had this interaction. But something about this time, I was like, I could get a megaphone right now, and I could snap. Like if it's like, like if I really wanted to, like I could snap right now and throw like a public fit about like, and like, here's the thing, like about mass in particular for me, like I don't, and this kind of relates to the government and sovereignty. It's like I wouldn't care if on the very individual level or like at the city level or at the level of the individual business, if they wanted to enforce certain mandates. You know, if like a locally owned business was like, we want you to wear masks to enter into our store. Like I can respect rules that are bottom up. Like something like I can respect that. But what my experience of this whole pandemic is everything's top down. So the shops that are enforcing certain rules and their workers are wearing masks all day and they're enforcing their customers to wear masks, and all of it isn't because the people that own the store are concerned about their health or concerned about the health of the people. Like it's pressure from the government. They're facing fines if they don't. They're trying to stay in business. And for me, like that's government overreach, you know, regardless of where you stand in the whole, and it's so divisive, like it's hard to even touch, but like somewhere in there, like I feel in my spirit that we have to make some type of stand for human sovereignty, or we'll watch it slip away. We'll watch like they're already like I'm hearing a lot of people losing their jobs that
I'm
aren't
hearing,
willing
yeah, I'm hearing the
aren't
same.
willing to get vaccinated, and it's it's frustrating for me. Like it doesn't affect me as much because I'm independent, but I really feel for people that like on a philosophical level don't want to do this, and they're being put in, yeah, just situations that I don't feel like are fair, especially when you consider that there's not a massive scientific consensus in the scientific community about any of this. You know, it's all relatively new.
It's all in progress. I mean, they're learning as they go. I mean, I wish they'd be a bit more upfront about that. The fact that it's all a process. You know what I mean? And that they don't have all the answers. The experts, the academics, the people with the certifications, they don't have all the answers, and they are making mistakes.
And that like sentiment is like at the core of what science in its beauty embodies, is like
Hmm.
science in its like fullest integrity understands that it's an evolving process of increasing our perception and understanding of the human experience. It doesn't box itself in with laws that it can't question and restrict people's minds. Like what does do that though is corporate funded science. When science is, before the science begins, the conclusions are made, then you get in situations where funding is driving research in a direction where like the conclusions they're drawn are already set, and then everything outside of it is suppressed. And anyone that questions the already agreed upon narrative is first of all, they risk losing all of their credibility, they risk their career,
Oh
they risk
yeah.
public ridicule. It's it's wild. And I really try not to spread any doomsday business, because it's just, I don't think that helps. But like, it's hard for me not to see the vaccine as a business plan, as a business model, especially like,
Well, it's a
I think
product, right?
it's
A
a product.
vaccine is a product. I
And
mean,
these companies, like, are their valuation has 10x'd in the last 2 years. And I think, without a doubt, they had plans of doing the booster shots before any of this. When they were selling it as a one and done, two and done
maybe
solution,
gave a weaker dose to,
yes,
you know.
everything back to normal. Like, when they were selling it as that, they knew, like, I believe just in my soul, they knew that their plan all along was knowing that as the virus evolved and as we found out more, and it's not and just the complexity of the human body, that they're planning on doing repeated booster shots, which is why I have such an issue with the vaccine passports. Because I have no issue if someone wants to take the vaccine. I don't know. I don't make any claims about, like, the vaccine itself, but I do understand human sovereignty. And if we allow a vaccine passport to be in place, then it won't be a situation where you get one vaccine and all of a sudden you're set. If we allow
Get it
it to go in
repeated.
place,
I mean, you have to keep getting it. I mean,
they're
you
gonna
have to.
be able, at the switch of a at this, and it's digital, so at the flip of a switch, they're gonna be able to remove you from participation in society when they deem that your current level of vaccination is no longer up to date with the new kind of arbitrary pharmaceutical requirements. And
That's interesting, because it's almost like maybe it's a test run for like a bigger technology. You know what I mean? Just like a bigger compliance system. You know what I mean? I think I wrote like early on, like with the COVID stuff, that I felt like it was kind of like a diagnostic
mm,
test. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That it was,
yeah, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the whole pandemic? Like, I think there's
well,
a
they've
lot of
evolved a lot. They've
funny business on both sides, where I think you have people, there's delusion on both sides, where there's
I've literally
disregard.
I've literally like stood on like both sides of the fence with it throughout the process. That's how much it's changed. Like, it's been a serious topic in my house, man, because I mean, there's potentially life or death implications. You know what I mean? I have kids. You know what I mean? I have a family. You know what I mean? Like, I have a lot of responsibilities, like, and my wife. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a serious matter in our house because of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because people have lost their lives. We know some. Our next door neighbor, like I met, like literally right next door. You know what I mean? Lost her life. She was an older woman. You know what I mean? But she lived there with her daughter. Her daughter still lives there. We still talk to her. They're great. We love them. But she had lost her mom last December. And which is pretty close to home. I mean, shit. It's like, I mean, we can hear them. They can hear my daughter, like my daughter playing and stuff. That's how close. And that was unfortunate. You know what I mean? We were very sorry to hear that. But I would say early on, my instinct was to say this is a bunch of bullshit. It really was. I mean, that was my knee jerk reaction. Like, this is some kind of, something's going on. They at it again. It's like, well, what are they up to? What are they doing? But as I observe more and more, just my actual community, like where I live, where I am. You know what I mean? Like, and as the situation has evolved, my views evolve too. You know
I
what I mean? Because yeah, it's not my views evolve too. Because like when I'm going down to the local hospital just for like some normal stuff, and there's tents and there's people, like there's you know what I mean? There's just tent that they got to overflow at our local hospital because there's so many people. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, well, I can't deny that. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I didn't just see that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I have my suspicions, but that looks pretty real, and it's like, okay, those are people in my community. This is not these are people who live, where they live in this community and whatnot. So I would say my views have evolved as I've witnessed
yeah.
this thing take a real toll on people in my real life, like people that exist. As my mom would call me, hey, such and such is sick with COVID.
And I
We haven't
think
really,
I think your views should evolve. Like I I definitely am of the like mentality that like I try to use my lived experiences as the truer indicators of a situation.
yeah,
Nothing off social media, nothing off the news. Like my lived experiences, those are things I can trust. And so when you have those experiences, I think you should allow them to shift your perspective. And it's important, I think, to respect like the human loss. I think when you disrespect that and you disrespect like the real suffering that's taking place and the people that have lost their loved ones, like I think you lose a certain amount of credibility and genuineness from your message.
and that's what gets me, like with the people that'll say that it's just completely not real, like that there's nothing even exists, like there's no virus, there's nothing, like I yeah, that stuff bothers me because it's like, okay, people have died. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like people have lost their lives a lot.
Yeah.
600,000 people isn't it, like, to me, isn't a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. And then
I
it's
mean,
just so difficult then also though, because on the flip side, you have these deaths that you like our humanity is like part of who we are. We're compassionate beings. Like I really believe we are. And so we feel that loss. But at what point do you not let like authority figures use your own compassion against you, and I think that's some of what we witness. Because for me, like personally, like like I kind of have a somewhat dark sense of humor, just in that I don't think death is the worst thing in the world. Like I think it's a beautiful part of the cycle, and I think we as a society have an unhealthy relationship with death, and I think COVID has really highlighted that. But like I think it's a tragedy also, like I have a 13-year-old brother, and he's in middle school, and they eat lunch in the gymnasium with like 200 chairs spaced out 6 feet apart, eating out of their lap, and they're supposed to put their mask on in between bites, up in Washington. Like
I've never heard that's wow.
that to me is
Between bites.
between bites. Like that to me is a tragedy as well, and that's affecting children. That's affecting their psychological imprints for the rest of their life, of how they view the world, and the fear that we're instilling in children of some elusive virus that's out there. Every time you leave your house, every time you shake someone's hand, you hug someone, we're drilling this fear into them. And at a certain point, like I really start to weigh the cost of that like, and this is just me, but I start to weigh it higher than the cost of life because we're starting to kill people that are already alive. You
Mm.
know, like when people start to live in fear, that to me is like it's a death in itself to stay in your house for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, to wear a mask every day. Like it's so symbolic for me because it's like a mask, right? And and a lot of people are like, who cares? Like we'll do whatever it takes, you know. But for me, it's a symbolic mask. It's like how long will you cover your face? How long will you hide yourself and live in fear? Because I don't think they're gonna tell you to take the mask off. Like
Well, no, probably not.
I really think if they were gonna tell you, like they've been toying with you, like all of us, and changing the rules every 6 weeks, and now the vaccinated have to wear masks again, and the
Yeah,
next
I heard about
booster
that.
round they'll tell you, no, now you can take your mask off, and then they'll tell you to put it back on. Like I just feel like I'm being toyed with. I'm being, I don't know. I don't like it.
Jerked
I,
around. Yeah. I mean, well, I
I
think the general public just feels like that in general, just kind of jerked around. You know, you say one thing and now you're saying this, and then you're going to say one thing and now you're saying this, you
and
know.
the
And with
question I
that,
think that we're getting to the core of is like the public doesn't trust the government or the technocratic elite to make decisions that are for our best interest. And I
and
think
that's
we
the
have,
government, and more importantly, I would say that's the government's fault.
yes, we have
So
every
it's
right. We have every right to feel like that.
it's the
Over, if
government's
you look
fault.
at
We
the
don't.
last 20 or so years, we have every right to hold that sentiment. And so, what's next? You know, like because I personally like I don't like I'm not gonna consent to this. And I think part of the wave that I feel like I'm riding of like this pro sovereignty is like I'm fascinated on a conscious level as to what happens when enough people stop believing in the authority of a group of people. If you start to really view the government, the elite, whatever, as a group of individuals with their own faults, with their own agendas, with their own power complexes and greed and their own healing that they need to do. If you start really looking through that lens and stop lending your power to them, then like I'm like it's part of like why I view my Twitter as an experiment of sorts. Like, I'm fascinated as to what happens when a pro sovereignty movement like that gains momentum, you know, and really starts like if you think of power like I think of power, which is that they don't have any power over us until we believe in their power over us.
Yeah, we have to legitimize it,
That we have to legitimize it by agreeing
supporting it.
to it, consenting to it, supporting it,
Bang.
voting on it. Like that's where they're getting our power from. What happens really in the world when you stop believing it? What gets born from that, you know? And I believe it's a new world of like a better world. You know, I think one dies for another one to be reborn, and I think we're in that really interesting like transition phase between worlds where like COVID is like
Mhm.
the end days to me, you know, where it's like
Last days. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, my views I think have changed quite a bit. I don't know. What do you think would happen if everyone on Earth did something together?
I think that's yeah, like I think
What if we all decided to do one thing together?
like we need to embody a team mentality as an earth. And I think like maybe at some deeper level, that's the plan all along, is like I think at some like higher level, like there's some plan, some divine plan to unite humanity through all of this. And
I think so.
and I and that's why like sometimes like I'm I'm torn on like the globalists and the new world order and the Zionists and some of like these things because on one level like I don't believe in controlling other people. I believe in respecting the individual sovereignty
Hmm.
of people, of individual communities, of decentralization. Like I really believe in these concepts. But then I also believe in like global unity, and I don't feel a lot of nationalism. Like I don't
Yeah, me neither. I mean,
I
the hell with that. I mean, patriotism, Jesus.
like most of that just leads to conflict, and same with really strict, rigid religious um, identification that just leads to conflict, and really identifying with anything ultimately leads to conflict. Like once you identify with something, you are in conflict with something else. And so I think
True.
to I think part of this process of awakening and my journey has been to find like anything that I'm identified with or that I get defensive about or that I'm triggered by, and to use all of that as like feedback to show me what I'm still attached to, you know,
Yeah,
and
like a
and
window.
yes, like that's a blockage. That's an energetic blockage. Anything I'm attached to in my identity and my belief systems, anything that I'm really rigidly attached to the point where when that is under attack, I feel like I'm under attack. That to me just shows something within myself that like I need to heal. I need to work through. I need to
It's a good way to look at it.
yeah, it's been a wild few years for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So
Yeah,
so I guess your account is like I know you consider yourself a futurist.
I do.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about like your vision for humankind and your vision for like how you think we should like if we were living in Brandon's world, and you
Mm.
were the master architect of the divine kingdom of heaven on earth, like what are the pillars that you would build a human civilization around?
Mm. That's a great question. It's funny enough. Like I think the COVID situation is kind of a precursor to the world that I imagine in an interesting way. Like I mentioned earlier that I felt like COVID might be kind of like a test
Yeah.
for our species. Like, what if we were facing some collective threat? What if there was a collective threat to every single one of us?
Like
That that was,
aliens or
or
something.
aliens,
Yeah.
aliens, or it could be like some Graham Hancock, like a global calamity,
I love
an
Graham.
upheaval, yes, or anything. But just say we were facing a challenge like that, and if we didn't get it right, we were all doomed. Like we were done. Our species was finished. Like the book was closed on us. Like we had no, way forward. You know what I mean? It's like, mm, how can I put it? I feel like the potential of our species is tied to our ability to act together.
Mm.
to act in concert, to meet a challenge together as one. I think if we figure out a framework to do that, we can solve any challenge. We can solve any obstacle, anything that would ever threaten us. We would be able to surpass. We would be able to find a solution. It would just simply be so much computational power between all of our intellects, all of our spiritual energy, all of our insights, all of our inspiration, all of our, you put that together, I mean, that's like the Infinity Gauntlet that we look at in the Marvel movies, that it snap, you know, you snap your fingers and anything can happen. You know what I mean? Anything can be created, anything you imagine can come alive. Like that's the world I imagine, that's the world or future I imagine.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously living in this COVID era has been rather depressing. You know what I mean? Think about it. Like living in the COVID era has been rather depressing because it's like, no matter which way you go, we don't have a framework to respond to any kind of, if were there were a challenge like that to suddenly present, we would be completely defenseless against it. Because we would spend more time fighting, we would spend more time disagreeing with ourselves about whether or not it even exists, that we wouldn't be able to meet it.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Like we wouldn't be able to meet the challenge, and you know, we would be an evolutionary failure
I
for,
think
you know, for failing to potentiate ourselves, you know, and even at the time of our greatest need, even when at the time where the world needed it most, when the children of our world needed it most, when we needed, you know, and I'm not talking about this virus.
yeah.
You know, if you haven't, I'm not talking about that. You know what I mean? That's just, I'm talking about that as a primer for something else. I'm talking about that as a symptom or as an indicator that we have big problems as a species, that we have massive, I mean, and of course we, so, you know.
I share your inkling that all of this is in some grander scale a test of our species and our ability to react to circumstances in which we would need to work together in harmony, and and that is also something that I isolated early on in my frustration with society as our problem is the misuse of the genius of the human intellect. You know, in this current capitalist system, like everything is so profit driven that we have all these like, genius, brilliant people, creators, innovators, scientific minds, you know, that they are somehow trying to make a living inside the system. And so their skills are being used in ways that in many cases are they're actually being destructive to the overall betterment of humanity. When I think like it's not their fault, right? Like they're trying to make a living, they have a certain skill set, and then they're offered big money to make an
You're kind of
atomic.
saying, so you're kind of saying, like, basically, just to paraphrase, like like that person not having the opportunity to bring out or use their potential is a danger. It makes them a danger then, or it's a dangerous situation then. Is that
Yeah,
kind
well,
of?
yes, like what I'm saying is like, all right, we have so much, like we agree, like I agree with you very yeah, very much on the true brilliance of humanity. You know, I think there's so much untapped creative power and innovation that's available to us. And I think in the current systems we have, a lot of times what happens is we have this extremely talented individual with these gifts, XYZ, you know, and these gifts, they can be used in multiple different ways. You know, Einstein's brain can be used to create an atomic bomb, or it could be
Like a
used
new energy source,
to
something
create a
that,
new energy source. You know, Tesla had his own ideas. So what what I think is fundamentally wrong is right now, because everything is so corporate and so driven by profit and greed, we it's like the system is fundamentally parasitic, and new innovations become a threat to the system itself that's trying to maintain itself. And so the system actually suppresses innovation and new ideas that would improve the overall quality of life.
so like what we're seeing with the fossil fuel industry, with the big
Yes,
oil, what big oil's always done, always stopping their boots on, other technology, and other companies are trying to compete. They try to
water
squash
powered
them.
cars, like that was invented, and I'm not saying that's the solution, but that was invented in the 90s, was the first person to come up with a water powered car. And
Mhm.
he was assassinated straight up. Like he died from poisoning at like a local cafe. Like in his last words were discussing that he believed he'd been poisoned, and then his patents were bought out and seized by the oil companies. And so that's just like the microcosm of the macrocosm, right?
Mhm.
Where we have so much brilliance, but the money is threatened by the brilliance,
And we're so invested, and
and
they're
we're so
so
invested
invested in
in the
in the
current,
ways of the
yes,
old world,
in the old
so
paradigm.
entrenched in it that it's like, oh God, we couldn't imagine untethering ourselves. We'd rather just destroy the whole world than do that.
And what we're doing right now is we're destroying the whole world. And w- like, I believe it's basically gonna get so dystopian, if it's not already so dystopian enough, that like we're eventually gonna be forced to abandon the old paradigm. And as a part of that, like in the new paradigm, like it's gotta be about empowering those creators, those visionaries, those people that are going to take us to the next level of technology, renewable energy, that are going to take us to a new understanding of health and the electromagnetic fields of the body, and
Yeah.
redefining our understanding of the human experience. We need to shift the energy and the currency back into true humanitarian efforts, um, that kind of align with this vision of peace and global unity. And one thing I also believe in is like, I believe completely, and this is something like most people, like you'll never hear politicians talk about because it's like a pipe dream, but it shouldn't be, is I believe in genuine abundance for all. Like I believe like
Me
at this
too. Right on.
stage in our technological scientific advancement as a species, we should be able to supply food, water, shelter as like bare minimum basic human
Absolutely.
rights. Like if we
Yeah.
really want, if we prioritize that as a species, we said we
We're
want people to be fed and housed. It's like that. If we chose to prioritize it instead of choosing to prioritize the military industrial complex and war and
Yeah, yeah, we're not an intelligent species until all of those things can be supplied for all of our people. We're not an advanced species. We're not an advanced species when you got people sleeping on streets,
I agree.
starving. Like what? That's not, you know what I mean? We're not there. We're not,
And that's what's so weird about this particular time in history is like you have billionaires like taking rocket trips into space, and
they're
and
getting the
like,
preview of their future homes, man, as
dude,
we
they're
all rot down below on Earth, as as the air runs out, we continue to poison. They're gonna be up in space.
and I think another thing that we're witnessing, like on a metaphysical level, is like I think we're watching like like we're watching two civilizations break away.
Oh yeah, that's a good word.
And
Breakaway.
one of those
Timelines.
civilizations, yes, timelines. And
Convert,
and and at the very like metaphysical level of what those timelines represent, it's fear and love. And the old paradigm is all fear. Everything is fear, from your schooling. You're afraid to fail. You're afraid to go to hell. You're afraid to go to jail. Like everything, the way
Disappoint
you
your
live your life,
parents, just
you're
yeah,
afraid to
just
be homeless. You're
yeah.
afraid to, yeah, to disappoint your peers and your parents. Like so much of your behavior is driven by fear that you're not in alignment with your spirit. And that's what the whole matrix is is siphoning. It's our spiritual energy. It's
Hope. I
yeah.
think it's just it's taking our hope.
And then I think that the other civilization that's being born right now is one that's rooted in love. And that's why I consider it like an honor to be here and an honor to be a part of this movement.
It's
Is
a
I think
privilege, yes.
we really are at the very, like at such an iconic historical moment in time that most people don't even recognize what's happening.
I think it's a very pivotal time, man. Very momentous, man. Like it's like we're on the precipice. It's like we're either about to go quantum or we're going back to the Stone Age, man. Like that's kind of how I put it. Like it's like we're kind of at that crossroad. You know, we're like we're either about to make a great leap forward or we're going to make a misstep.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to make a misstep and
And
go the
I
way of Atlantis. You talk about Atlantis.
we're at that moment in time. Like that's what I believe. Like that's what I truly believe is what we're witnessing is those same mistakes that were made in Atlantis that led to the fall of Atlantis, which were a misuse of technology and an over like an overexertion of energy focused on the intellect and the mind, and a neglect of the spirit and the soul. And when you start to hyper focus on the mind and like and in conceptualizations and division and use and technology too, technology does not always represent advancement. Like we've
No,
been so programmed to believe that technology is the indicator of progress, but like I would argue that spiritual development is the true indicator of progress. And so what I think we're living through is like at least in the timeline of love and the timeline that I believe in, is I think we're returning to spirit and integrating technology. Like we're taking the best of where we are in this moment in time and the best of modern society and the culture and like the beneficial, not self-destructive parts of the culture.
yes.
And then
Use
we're
the good. You take the good and
yeah,
throw out the bad,
and
right?
then we're integrating it with like lost memories of who we've been, who we are as human beings, like as powerful creators, and remembering our divinity. Like people are so truly out of touch with their divinity on earth. Like uh,
So
the average person, like it's
yeah, I mean, with me, like I like with technology, like it's like if the technology doesn't like share the values of our planet, of Gaia, of Earth, then that actually represents a de-evolution.
agreed.
You know what I mean? Unleashing that out into the world actually represents that's a this backpedal. You know what I mean? That's a de-evolution. You know what I mean? And so I think the challenge is for the technologies to take the best of the best of nature, and integrate those values, integrate those understandings into the technology. You
Yeah,
know what
and
I mean?
yeah, and while we're on the topic of technology, I think it's a great segue to like transhumanism, which is another thing we're witnessing. Like, and I don't think people grasp a lot of things, but I don't think people grasp the like severity and like momentousness of the fact that we are at the precipice of the transhumanist movement. And like, it's not hidden, it's not an agenda, it's not a conspiracy. Like, Elon Musk is creating Neuralink. He's openly discussing the we're gonna merge our consciousness with AI. We're gonna like we can avoid death. We can become more powerful. We can increase our computation. Like, and
Yeah,
people aren't really listening. You know, they're becoming desensitized to the idea of it, but they're not really thinking about it in terms on a spiritual soul level. And one of the biggest lies I think of the transhumanist message is that it makes you more powerful. I really believe that transhumanism represents a devolution of the human race, and that everything that transhumanist claims to solve and claims to make us more powerful is actually gifts that we already have, that by merging with machine we lose access to those natural abilities. So like telepathy, for example, Elon is talking about how once you have your implant and your thing and your antenna or whatever, like you're going to be able to send telepathic thoughts to your
it's like these people don't understand how much more powerful the brain is
like
than a computer.
like we're already
They don't.
telepathic.
It's like you
We
don't
we've
understand,
already
man.
we
Like
can
the
already
brain is that is the next gen technology. Like the brain is the mother of all technologies. You know what I mean? We already have it. You know, the brain, the computer, and of course I work with computers. I know computers, and they're just a faint mimicry of the human nervous system.
yeah
You know what I mean? And they don't have the potential that the human nervous system does because they can't create of their own self. You have to program them.
yeah
A human being has to program them. And if a machine programs them, then that machine is that was programmed by a human is programming. So a human is still you know what I mean? A human is still in a roundabout way programming. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely scary shit when you talk about transhumanism and the trends and just the kind of things that these people are talking about, like with the Neuralink. Like it's like on one hand, it sounds cool. You know, you listen to Elon Musk, it's like, oh man, you're going to have the computational power of, you know, the biggest supercomputer there ever was, you know, and of course I'm thinking we already have that.
yeah
But we already have that. We haven't even begun to unlock and
yeah
cultivate the brain. Look at schools. We're not doing it there.
no
Is that where the brain is being cultivated? Is that where the potential of the brain is being brought out? You know, in the school systems. You know, I mean, we haven't even tapped into that. You know what I mean? Like yeah. I mean, we got a long way to go there, and these people are just so obsessed with these transhumanist
and
ideas.
for me it's like playing God with yourself. You know, it's like if you believe like that in your organic being that you are created, you know, and that you are divine and that you're created in God's image or whatever religion resonates the most with you. You know, if you believe that, then I think you find some like you're conflicted with the idea of letting like taking a machine into yourself to alter yourself in any way, because it's like by doing that you're accepting that in some way you as you are flawed and you need this technological improvement.
Let me play devil's advocate real quick. What if someone what if someone had like an amputated limb and they got one of Elon Musk's next gen, some kind of, some kind of prosthetic that they can control with their brain. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's incredible. And
No,
what would you say to something like that?
play devil's advocate, because I work with people that have amputations, and I've talked to them about this specifically, actually, and of course they want the most cutting edge technology. They want the closest, they want to even exceed the experience of having a leg if possible, they want the most, like, yeah, they want that experience, and that's what's so beautiful about sovereignty of your consciousness, right? Is like, that's a, in my view, like, that's a divine being, like making a decision to, like, making the conscious decision to take on this amendment to their physical body to help with their, to help them be able to participate and to live life as fully as they want to.
Mhm.
And I guess where I'm wary is where like, where do we draw the line between, when is it a sovereign conscious individual making a choice over their body, and when is it like being coerced, when is it people not fully understanding, because like, it's one thing to have a an amputated leg, and to install that technology and to be able to walk again and these things, but for me it's a different animal, at least in my perspective, if you don't really understand what merging your consciousness with AI would do, and I don't really understand, like, I don't claim to understand whether your consciousness could be trapped in AI forever or
I mean,
anything like that,
it's
but I don't
it's
think the creators of it really understand
they don't.
either. So it's like,
Right, and that's the
I
scary thing. That's the scary thing. They don't understand, like, necessarily what they'd be unleashing.
they don't. And yeah, I don't.
But the AI thing is interesting though, because it's like there's not just the doomsday vision with that. And it's not
No.
just the Terminator 2 vision where they wake up and see, all human beings are such a look at the threat they are. Let's get rid of them. Look what they've done to themselves and their planet. Let's get rid of them. Like, they're crazy. Like, it's like that's one vision, or we just get completely replaced by machines or whatever. But there's other visions, like in science fiction. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, I'm a big fan of Halo, the Halo series, the Halo, the games, the books, and like their vision for what AI ends up doing. Like, it ends up becoming like a crazy force multiplier for our species. Like, we program machines to like clean the planet up.
Yeah.
They command our planetary defenses. So like, when aliens show up to wipe us out, we actually have a fighting. Like, the only reason we actually end up having a fighting chance is because we have AI. Because
Yeah.
AI can make calculations so fast that they can keep up with the advanced technology that these aliens are using against us. And AI ends up being like one of the deciding factors in our
Yeah.
survival. You know what I
One
mean?
of,
I think.
one of my philosophical idols, I'm sure Terence McKenna.
Oh yes, yes,
He
yes.
was not against AI at all. I remember hearing a lecture with him, and he believed that if and when AI develops some level of self-awareness, they might view, like, us as the gods that brought them into existence,
Mm.
and they might, and this is another trend I want to talk about with AI, is so many times you hear negative things about AI displacing jobs, right? Where, like, for example, now when I go to the grocery store, I never deal with a cashier. I just
Which is
swipe it,
great.
self checkout,
It's great.
and first of all, I don't care if I deal with a
It's
cashier,
great.
and
And the cashier doesn't want to
I
be there.
can't name anyone that really, like,
Who
end
wants to
goal
do
wants
that?
to be a cashier. And so the question is, if you can program a machine to do it, will it ever really fulfill a human being? You know, like if a machine can do it and
Is
it's
that
repetitive
human work?
tasks,
Like
then should
if a
it be
machine can
human
do it,
work?
is that yeah.
Or are we so innovative, so creative, so unique and like un we can't be boxed in? Like are we so yeah, we so like just divine in this sense that anything that could be programmed by a machine to do the work, like if is offloading that to machinery, does that represent progress? And does it represent us moving into a freer society where people don't have to work jobs that they aren't passionate about and that they, yeah, I don't
See,
know.
that's the flip side, man. You
I
just
try to,
laid it
I
out.
always respect the flip side, man. I always
You
do.
laid it out. That's the flip side. Like, hey, like AI could be like the holy grail for our species. We might liberate ourselves from slave labor.
Yeah.
We've been slaving away for hundreds of thousands of years.
And
You know
I
what I
think,
mean?
I think what's, what's tricky is like I'm a big believer, first of all, that like nothing is inherently good or evil. You know, I think like we like to label things as good or evil, but really that's just being trapped in somewhat of a dualistic mind. And while I personally am never going to choose to integrate myself with an AI and become some hybrid AI being, like I I recognize first of all, it, just by having a phone and by using Twitter and by using the internet, we're already in some sense
Yes, it's true.
a hybrid technological being. But
It's just not physical. You know, it's not tied to our physiology. You know what I mean? It's not
not
connected.
yet,
But
not
yeah,
yet.
I mean, yeah, but it is similar.
It is, and I it's the only thing that's like concerning in terms of AI is how it's being used now or how it's been used in the last decade or so, which when you look at like social media, for example, like you now have AI rigging elections. Like you can AI can read a million profiles. It can basically like put you into a certain demographic, and then someone can use AI to send targeted ads during elections
Yeah.
to sway your consciousness with bots and all this. So the
It's
concerns with AI are that it's being weaponized against us to take away our freedom. And then the potential of AI is that it could be used as a force for our freedom and to actually increase human sovereignty and yeah, that's the
yeah,
dilemma.
but it's like when we look at the world today, it's like we don't get the sense that that it's technology that would be used responsibly. I think that's the problem. You look at the
Because
world, you look at the people controlling it, you look at what people do with
if there's one group of people I don't trust, it's those tech. It's like the technocrats, you know. Like
yeah,
I don't
and they'd be
trust.
the ones they you know they'll be the ones at the helm. The government won't even really understand that shit like that.
I mean, the government answer, in my opinion, at least, like if we're talking about real power, like the government is not the end all be all. You know, the government answers to the mega corporations. The government answers to Microsoft, to Amazon, to the companies that fuel the economy. Um, and they can push legislation, they can lobby, they can like in my perspective, they can pretty much pull the strings behind our government. And with that being said, I also think though that there's like some really shady, shadowy levels of government that really is like has been operating in a very like sinister um Orwellian sense. And I don't think like I think sometimes that's really quickly dismissed. And
Yeah,
in the topic of like truth, like I don't think it can be dismissed. Like the if we want to talk about like real truth about what's happening in this realm and how this world operates, like we can't ignore MK Ultra. We can't ignore
No.
that when we defeated the Nazis, we adopted half their policies and invited their scientists and researchers into our government. We can't
The
ignore,
Nazis actually learned from us. I think that's not a very well known thing, but I think when you, it's like they were studying America.
and
You know
they
what I mean? Like that's how shared their ideologies were. Like already, man. Like that's how much compatibility. Like
and that's why they were experimenting. The U.S. government was experimenting with so much psychedelics. Is like the government was trying to find ways to manipulate human consciousness and like crack the human psyche to figure out how to control people, how to control a population, how to get people to work jobs, how to like, because if
and they
you
figured
break
it
it,
out.
they figured this out, and
They learned.
it,
They figured it out.
it's fear, indoctrination, isolation, breaking
Trauma,
up community. It's
using
like
trauma.
using trauma. Like they learned a lot of this through really, I would say, immoral tests that were done in MK Ultra on people that have come out and spoke out that they didn't really consent to what they experienced and that they were traumatized for really the rest of their life through what they've been through.
And you know how our government will justify it? You know how they justify it? They
R&D.
say well, they say well, if we didn't do it, then someone else was going to do it. Then the Soviets would have done it, and they would have used it against us. Like if we didn't, we needed to get in front of that technology. We needed to get in front of that mind control technology because then then our political enemies, if we don't, they're going to use it. You know what I mean? That's how they justify
Yep.
pursuing things like that. It's like we
Like
have, you
the
know what I mean?
arms race, like,
Nukes. I mean, it's always like that. You know,
and so how do you break that? And that's when I see some potential in like what's happening right now is like it doesn't serve us as a species to have a bunch of nations at war with themselves. Like I think there there's beauty, like, and so this I'm gonna like do the both sides of it of an argument real quick as well. For some level of globalism is I believe that like the earth as a flourishing paradise that I imagine, like every place you go, the culture is representative of the people that live there, you know? So, like, I personally think it's a crime when I go to Paris and I see a McDonald's like a couple blocks away from the Eiffel Tower. Like, something in me is like, oh, that's a
like
shame.
oh god,
Like,
another one of those.
and when we go to like more indigenous peoples and older ways of life, and we in the guise of like modernizing and assisting them, what really we're just like enforcing our way of life onto them. Like I don't think that's right, and I don't think it's right to go to a country and if they don't want the vaccine, say all of you are getting vaccinated, or we're going to do trade restrictions. Like none of this.
Yeah, sanctions and
Like yeah,
yeah, I think that's
and
awful.
enforcing some like enforcing global rules upon all different types of people, like that isn't unity to me. That isn't peace. Like I feel like global unity in its essence has to be decentralized because you have to work your way up from sovereignty, from the individual. So you recognize the sovereignty of the individual, right? Where like so long as you are not harming others, you can do pretty much whatever you want with your life and you can make something of yourself or whatever. And then you have to bring that same mentality into the community. So a community of people they should be able to govern themselves and pool together their resources to create the life that they want to live, you know? And then working your way
So
up,
long as they're not,
so long as they're not
harming.
harming others. And then even on a national level, like if you want to have some type of national identity and you're proud of that, then you as a country should be able to govern yourself while respecting the community sovereignty, while respecting the individual sovereignty, while not harming other nations. Um, and no major country is aligned with this. You know, we as the United States are definitely not. We go to countries, we fund wars on both sides, we destabilize all sorts of governments, we overthrow, we kill
Kill,
innocents, we
drone strikes.
drone strike. It's totally we are not the embodiment of freedom or the embodiment of sovereignty at all, which was what this country I thought was founded on.
Well, that's what they said. It actually wasn't. I mean, they said that.
Yeah, I mean,
They said
we had
that.
an ugly start if we really recognize the
Yeah, man.
indigenous.
See, I studied all that shit. I studied all that shit, academically, and it's like actually, they designed the Constitution for an aristocracy, for a small elite. Like even from the beginning, it's like, okay, we're gonna enrich rich, wealthy white landowners, rich, wealthy white men are going to be the ones who are insulated by the system, and we're going to try to marginalize everybody else. Like they wrote that in, like that's, you know what I mean, that was part of the new system.